Noble Lord Sewell of Sanderstead, I thought gave us an inspiring scene setter for the next groups of amendments we're discussing. I think it was a taster of why the decisions we make in this bill matter to so many pupils and young people. And it's why I urge the government not to throw the baby out with the bathwater and in many instances think again. In this group, I'm standing to move my amendment 506A. It simply says that before the bill is passed or enacted, the government's own curriculum review needs to be published and consulted on. This legislation before us requires that all schools follow the national curriculum, and yet there is no agreed national curriculum. Instead, the government wants to review that curriculum, which is fair enough, but that review won't even be published before we're asked to vote blind. It's simply wrong for a bill to force schools to follow a particular curriculum when we haven't been told what's in it. Cart before horse and all that. More broadly, we've spent a long time on this bill so far, and outside of here, the bill is informally known as the Schools Bill. Yet we've managed not to discuss the whole reason for schools, to educate children into the world of knowledge until this point. And educating children requires on us agreeing on what the content of that education consists of. The curriculum isn't or should not be an afterthought, it's key. The raison d'etre for schools as vehicles used by one generation to pass on to the next the canonical knowledge of humanity. It itself, when taught well, is our greatest tool for social mobility. It's not a fixed body of knowledge, it's not frozen in aspic, it changes over time, it's often contested, it can be challenged, but it's a key component of educating the young. The arguments epitomised by this group of amendments asks whether every school needs to follow the same curriculum, that every school must follow it. And yet we don't know what curriculum we're talking about, despite how important the curriculum is. And the government recognises that, which is why it's set up the review. Just taking 3 amendments that we've got here gives us some sort of meat on what the curriculum bone might be or what the arguments might be. One calls for financial education in primary schools. We've already heard motivated. More to come in terms of education for growing food and food preparation, and another on education for voting. You might say that those curriculum-related amendments are hobby horse amendments, and I'm not saying that in an insulting way. They suggest the interest of the people putting them forward. They could all be creative and positive in a particular head's hands with certain groups of pupils, depending on how they were used. And if you get any group of teachers together at any time, any group of parents or any group of adults together, or indeed pupils, and say what should go in the curriculum, there's always very lively and creative discussions about priorities, what should matter, and so on and so forth. The point I'm making is that the curriculum, at the best of times, is something that's a sort of dispute. It can be liberating, it can be transformative and inspiring, but it can be, and we all know this to be true, overly ideological, propagandist. It can be politicised, used as a device for social engineering. And as I said at second reading, I worry when Professor Becky Francis says that her curriculum review will look at what's taught through a social justice lens with an emphasis on inclusivity. I'm afraid I do think of some of the more divisive aspects of identity politics, some of the arguments that have been had over critical race theory in schools, decolonisation and so on, and it just fills me with dread. This government has already had to pick up the pieces of curriculum missteps in relation to RSHE, as parents across the UK have become shocked to discover their children were covering highly sexualised and age-inappropriate content, and that some schools were affirming children in their chosen gender identities, a form of social transitioning now broadly discredited, and I commend the government actually for tackling that and taking it on. The point I'm making is all of that was inspired by centralised curriculum diktats, and I therefore think we have to consider what the centralised curriculum diktat for all schools will be after the curriculum review. Professor Francis has apparently said that the review will look at the alleged problem of that the curriculum is the alleged problem that the curriculum is too heavy. And my problem is that we're now being asked to vote on legislation in a curriculum lightweight, with the curriculum absent, despite a hugely significant mandate that all schools must follow this curriculum. Finally, we're told that the curriculum review will address barriers to attainment, but so far, the hints that we've been given into the review looks to be blaming exams and a curriculum that's overly academic for creating too much stress and anxiety for pupils, something that I completely disagree with. And this hints, perhaps, of a new assessment regime that will be less stressful, and I'm afraid I think that does fuel some genuine concerns amongst educators that the curriculum review might amount to a recipe for lower academic standards. And as we've seen in both Scotland and Wales, that have completely upended their curriculum in recent years, attainment has plummeted, sometimes below the OECD average. So just let me conclude by noting, I've not yet decided whether the Bill's Clause 47 is totally wrong-headed and should be dropped, although I thought that noble lady Baroness Evans of Bowes Park made a very good case that's definitely made me consider that to be worth considering. I am actually sold on the idea of a common entitlement for all children, and I'm not opposed on principle to a national curriculum for all. But I do think that the government should not be rigid and there should be more flexibility, and the noble Lord Storey's Amendment 444 allows for that, so I'm very interested in that. However, none of this is the point of my amendment. This bill says that all schools follow a national curriculum, but won't tell us what's in it before we're being asked to rubber stamp it. It just reminds me of one FE student I taught when I taught in further education. He was a bit of a cheeky chap. He missed a deadline for his GCSE, and he actually said out loud in the class, "Can't you just pass me, miss? I'll show you the essay when I've written it later." I thought that was a bit of a cheek, and I'm afraid the same cheek is being displayed by the government, and therefore I would urge the government to get their essay in on time, or at least allow us not to have to vote until we've seen the essay.